My name is Connor. As I said, I'm a global program advisor here at Rustic Pathways. What that means is I just help families and students select the program that's the best fit for them. So my history with the organization, I've been here for just shy of 10 years. The first 5 years, I worked all on the operations side of things. So I was our India and China country director, and then I ran programs in the United States, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Tanzania, Thailand, Cambodia, Fiji, Australia, India, China, Mongolia. So I've been all over the map. I always love people asking questions and trying to figure out what is the best program for their student. So this webinar is addressing all of those type things of how you select the program that really fits and aligns with your passions and interests. During the webinar itself, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rustic Pathways, how you can sort of compare the experiences, because you'll find that we have so many different programs, but they all have slightly different feels through the itineraries and the major topics that we're doing on those trips. We're going to go into some evaluation between the destinations. We're going to talk about maximizing your summer. So some questions for you to think about in terms of how long do you want to travel? What are exactly your travel goals? Do your goals sort of align with the trip you're selecting? Those kind of things. We're going to talk a little bit about scholarships and fundraising opportunity. We just have a scholarship deadline next week, so we'll quickly go over that for anyone that's looking to apply for the scholarship before the deadline next Wednesday. I'll go over how to enroll once you've selected the program that you're most excited and passionate about. And then, like I said, at the very end, we'll take questions. So use that Q&A section at the bottom for any questions that you have throughout the webinar. A little bit about Rustic Pathways. So at Rustic Pathways, we define Rustic as the intersection between education, travel, and philanthropy. So most often people find Rustic Pathways because they're really excited about having some kind of travel opportunity abroad, but also in the United States, we have programs. So a lot of people first find us because of just an innate interest in different people and society and cultures. At Rustic Pathways, we then take that responsibility very seriously and think about the education of our students on programs. So we want to make sure that when a student is attending a program with us, it's not just some fun experience, which it certainly will be that, but we want to make sure that they are gaining insight into different perspectives around the world, gaining insight into themselves, and providing ultimately an opportunity for personal growth. That can happen through community service projects. It can happen through adventure programs. It can happen through language immersion trips or photography trips. Really, we want to think about our students and providing an opportunity for them to become a different, more actualized version of themselves after having this glimpse of another community around the world. Beyond that, the philanthropy side of things, at Rustic Pathways, we also take it very seriously when we think about the sustainability of our programs. So we've been around for just shy of 4 decades now, so just shy of 40 years. And really we want to think about the idea that our students are coming in for 1, 2, 4 weeks at a time, but realistically, we might be in these communities or these countries for the next 30 years. So while we really do want to protect the experience of the student and make sure that they have a really awesome opportunity for growth, we also want to make sure that the communities that we're working with feel listened to and heard, and that they're developing and growing and getting just as much of hosting us as Rustic Pathways and our students as our students are themselves. A lot of that comes through philanthropy. So we have about 100 programs at Rustic Pathways, and about 70% of those programs have some kind of community service or volunteer element to them. What I think is so cool about that is it's not Rustic Pathways just going into the community and saying, we're going to build a school in every destination that we go to. There certainly are some destinations where building a school or a classroom is really important, but we want to have that conversation with the community themselves, because they might self-identify that one of their biggest issues is gender equality issues, or that it might be that they don't have access to clean water, or they have really not great access to public health services. We want to work with those communities to make sure that we're doing the projects that they think will have the most impact, and then aligning what can we do with our students and the finances and the time and labor that we can bring into those projects to make sure that we're developing something that is mutually beneficial for everyone participating in these programs. The next thing to think about when choosing a program is what are those different kinds of experiences? So the first thing I mentioned is community service. It's the single most thing that most people come to Rustic Pathways thinking about because we have so many different community service trips. And knowing what type of community service you're interested in is also really important in sort of determining, what category of trips you should maybe be looking at. So some things to think about, or some categories that I usually give people to identify what you're passionate about, is, are you interested in animals or wildlife or conservation issues? So that could be anything from working with pandas or elephants, to planting trees, to removing invasive species, to working with underwater ecosystems. It can really revolve around a lot of things related to environmental service, but there's a lot of category, or a lot of programs in the environmental service sort of category of things. You also might be interested in education initiatives. So that's usually like working with schools or students in developing either leadership skills or in tutoring English, or just some kind of development work with youth or students. The last major category that I usually give people is infrastructure. So that's usually things like building a home, or digging trenches and laying pipework to get water access to communities that don't have it. A lot of people just really think they like to see a project when they're there, and at the end they like to say, yes, I built that wall, or yes, we dug half a mile of trenches to lay pipework to get water into this community. So there's a lot of different things when we talk about community service. Next kind of experience you can kind of think about is adventure. So that's going to be things like, am I interested in whitewater rafting, or bungee jumping, or skydiving, or do I want zip lining, or do I want a program that really travels around a lot and goes to see, the Opera House in Sydney, but also the Outback, but also the Great Barrier Reef, and every day or two I want to be in a different location. Thinking about what kind of adventure activities or opportunities you might want in a program also sort of helps you narrow down some of the program options. Some people really want all that high adrenaline and they want a program where you jump out of an airplane. Some students want something that's still very adventurous, but that might be hiking, or it might be zip lining, or something that's not on the extreme end of jumping out of an airplane. Another category that we really like to talk about is our critical issues programs. So this is a special series of programs at Rustic Pathways that are a little bit more academically focused and are really for students that want to dive really deep into one issue. So the critical issues trips that we've set up at Rustic are issues that we've identified are going to be really important issues for youth or teens of today and their generation as they go through the next 10, 20, 40 years of growing up. And so those types of things are going to be like global warming issues, or access to water, or fair and equal access to education, or gender equality issues. And those programs are going to have some pre-departure readings. We're going to have more in-depth conversations. Usually we're talking to community members. So we're talking to heads of nonprofits or businesses that are affected by those specific issues in those regions. So it's another way to think about programs if you want a little bit more of like an academic experience to your trip. The next part is base houses. And really the way base houses are accommodation that's owned, run, operated by Rustic Pathways, designed for a larger group of students. And it's typically a more comfortable accommodation style. So it's usually bunk style housing. There's running water, electricity, showers. There might be a swimming pool at the base, or just big old soccer field for people to hang out out back. There's usually large common area spaces. It's just really comfortable. It sort of looks like what you kind of would imagine a summer camp to look like in the United States. But really I highlight this section because I just think accommodation is a really important thing to think about when evaluating what type of experience you want. As I said, with base houses, it's a little bit more comfortable accommodation, but we really run the gamut in types of accommodation that you could expect on a program. So some programs are staying at hotels, some are really rural and rugged. So you're staying in a village for 2 weeks with no running water or electricity. You're going to shower once, maybe twice on the program. And some people really want something that's that rugged. We have some programs that are staying with homestay families. So you're always, if you're with a homestay family, or you're with at least one other student, they're all vetted by Rustic Pathways. Typically, we've been working with the same families on all of those programs for, half a dozen to 10 years sometimes. Some people really want that sort of in-home experience, and some people don't. So really just thinking about what kind of level of comfort you want and accommodation is really important for evaluating the trip you want. And then 5 is just some or all of the above. So maybe you want some amount of community service, but also some adventure. Or maybe you want something that has a little bit of nicer accommodation, but spends 1 or 2 days in a village. We have so many different programs at Rustic Pathways that we've built and designed these programs to sort of have opportunities for every type of student. I've literally never met a student that has opened our catalog or seen the website and looked through all of our programs and could not find something that they weren't super interested and engaged in. There's just such a level of all of these different things on programs that you should be able to find something that you're really aligned with and passionate about. It's just figuring out what those passions and interests are and being honest and open with yourself about what kind of opportunity and experience you're looking for. I talked about this on the last slide, but these are the different types of service projects that you can really think about. Again, we're really big advocates of people taking the time to think about what those types of service look like and asking questions. I think it's really interesting at Rustic Pathways as well. You're going to start to read on the website or in the catalog something like, we're going to be working on an infrastructure development project for low-income communities. A lot of people see that and they say, okay, but what exactly am I doing for those 2 days? And I really like people to think about that as well, because we're designing our programs for summer 2019 a year in advance. And so with things like that, if you're working in a village of 2,000 people, they're not going to say, okay, we're going to pull out our calendar and yes, in 10 months from now, we really need you to rebuild this family's home. Oftentimes what we're doing in those communities is we realize that there might be a priority list of things that we want to accomplish. So maybe we first are finishing a classroom because we just need to expand a classroom or add a classroom. And once we finish up with that, we're going to be working on a rebuilding project for a family whose home was affected during the storm in the spring or something like that. So all of our service, as you read on the catalog, is going to give you these types of categories. And I really think more than being bogged down into like, okay, I'm going to be digging a trench or mixing cement or laying brick or teaching, this English lesson to a classroom, thinking about the categories of types of thing you're interested in is the way to sort of approach exploring the website and catalog to find what you're most aligned with. Next thing is you might just want to pick a program based in destination. So as I said, we have 100 trips. We work in just shy of 20 countries during the summer. So a lot of people really just like the idea. They're like, I've just always been interested in going to Asia. I want to find something within that region. Or I really want to go to a country that is Spanish speaking because I'm taking it in school. So I'm going to limit myself to like Latin or Central America. So I also have the opportunity to engage in the language while I'm there. Also a really great way to evaluate things. For some reason, some people are really passionate about programs in Africa and they're not as interested in the South Pacific. Totally fine. Doesn't make Africa or the South Pacific better or worse than one another. Just sort of points out what you are passionate and excited about to see and learn in the world. I think that's a great indicator for people to sort of evaluate the different destinations, which might be a good fit for them. The two sort of pieces of advice I give for 2 categories of people, so for parents and students, is 1, students, you do not have to travel on the other side of the world to make it more exotic or to have a bigger cultural experience. Even if you go to a place like Cuba or the Dominican Republic, that's not as many miles away, it is still going to be culturally very different and very unique probably to where you grew up at home. China is also going to be as culturally unique, but one is not more or less unique than one another. So really think about why you might want to go all the way to Tanzania or Mongolia. Is it because you're interested in that culture, or is it just because you want as many miles as possible? And I just really encourage you to stick with the country that seems most culturally interesting to you. On the flip side with that, to parents, oftentimes with parents, I see parents say like, you know what, we only want them to go to Costa Rica. I want them as close to me as possible. And really, I think that comes out of the idea of like, it feels safer to a parent when it's not as many miles away. But realistically, all of our programs go through the exact same safety and risk management protocols and assessments. We have standards at Rustic Pathways about how we evaluate a country as a safe destination for our students to travel. How do we evaluate the individual program content to make sure it's safe for our students? So it doesn't matter if you're going to Costa Rica or someplace like Cambodia, they're all sort of fitting those safety standards. And realistically, if you feel uncomfortable with the idea of someone going all the way to Cambodia, so they should stick with Costa Rica, I definitely just encourage you to give us a call to walk through what a safety procedure and protocol looks like. The realistic assessment to that is if there were an emergency, ultimately Rustic Pathways is the person that you should trust and expect is going to take care of the student in the emergency situation. We wouldn't want to rely on you to have to fly to Costa Rica to deal with this situation. We want to be just as comfortable with you sending your student to Costa Rica as you are to Thailand. So really think about the reasons why you want to stick closer or go further away while evaluating which of these programs and which of these countries is the right area or region for you to travel in. So these are some questions that I think are really important if you just like want to take a screenshot or jot a note down that I think you should be asking yourself when sort of navigating the website or the catalog. Like I said, how far away do you want to travel? Is there a certain country or region that is most important to you? Are you looking for something off the beaten path, or do you want something not as off the beaten path? That usually refers to something related to like accommodation. So do you want something in a village, or are you more comfortable with bigger city or easier accommodation where at the end of the day, when you want to go up and use the bathroom, it's a Western style toilet and you can turn the light switch on, to make it down the hallway to get there. You're not worried about having a headlamp with a flashlight to go to a squat toilet. So like thinking about those types of experiences are really important. And it's not on this list, but like I said, thinking about the category. So do you want a service trip, an adventure trip, mixture of it? Also, I think an important question to consider. And then the last bit is, do you have any dietary restrictions or allergies? If you have a medical concern or restriction, definitely please feel free, get in touch with us anytime to ask if a program is a good fit for us or for your family. A couple really good examples, like if you have a severe peanut allergy, you won't be able to participate in most of our programs in Thailand or Southeast Asia. There's just too pervasive of peanut usage in diet and cooking in that region of the world, that if we are in a restaurant or any place where we're not 100% cooking all of the food as like Rustic Pathways cooks and chefs, we couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be cross-contamination. So if you had a severe peanut allergy, you might not be able to do something like the elephant conservation program. There also are students that have things like they're on a medication that needs to be refrigerated. If that's the case, you might not be able to do something like climbing Kilimanjaro, where we don't have access to refrigeration unless you are able to, maybe have like a cooler or something like that for your medication. So anything like that, really think about any restrictions on your end that may preclude you from participating in a program, and then just always ask us, because we always want to make sure that whatever program you select, we can still accommodate you and have you on the program, but we still need to make sure that we can safely take you to that program and that destination. Next thing to think about is just maximizing your summer. So this is a student quote. I won't read it, but you can certainly read through it as I'm talking. A lot of times people look at these programs and are like, oh my gosh, Tanzania sounds great. I definitely want to do the Njoro Village Service Program, but it's only a 1-week program. Why am I going to spend all of this time or money to go all the way to Tanzania only there for 1 week? Best way to think about our programs at Rustic Pathways is we've designed them to be a little bit more a la carte style. So you can stay for as short or as long as you want and you can mix and match different interests to sort of have the opportunity and schedule that you are looking for. So Sammy is a great example here of sort of mixing and matching those interests. So, she was clearly interested in wildlife. So she wanted to do our African wildlife conservation program, learning more about the native endemic species of Tanzania, doing some community service, working with them. Awesome. She also wanted some adventure. So she wanted to climb Kilimanjaro. She was going all the way there. She wanted to make sure that she ticked off her bucket list of climbing the largest summit in Africa. And then on top of that, she wanted to have a little bit of fun on a traditional African safari and at the beach, which is our Serengeti to Zanzibar experience. All of those things are really cool. You might find someone that just wants to climb Kili or only has 2 weeks, so just wants to do the safari, but you may find that you have the time and you want to mix and match some of these passions and interests. I always think it's really important to think about that. All of our programs in the same country are designed to connect with one another. So they always begin and end on the same day in country, and then programs within the same region connect. So everything in Asia connects with one another, everything in the South Pacific. So that's Australia, New Zealand, Fiji connect with one another. Our Latin America programs connect. Morocco and Tanzania is the sort of one exception. Africa doesn't really interconnect with other Africa, just programs within the same country. But you can definitely connect trips within the same either country or region. And when you're looking on the website or in the catalog, it'll look like there's slightly overlapping dates. And the reason for that is because everything's listed as departure and arrival dates from the United States. So when you think about the idea of flying to and from that country, as well as potentially crossing the international date line, when it looks like there's an overlap in the catalog or on the website, there's no actual overlap of the program content itself. It's just the flight time. You're not going to miss a day of either program. It'll start and end at the same time in country. Next thing I want to talk about is scholarships and fundraising. Huge thing at Rustic Pathways. We're really big advocates for trying to figure out, one, how to make this financially available for as many students as possible, even if you don't have a lot of financial resources in your home, or thinking about the way that even if you don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars that you make every year, where, a couple $1,000s for a trip is a drop in the bucket, what's a way for a family to contribute, but also the student to contribute? There's a great page on our website about scholarships and fundraising, giving students ideas for how to fundraise, which could be as simple as reaching out to friends and family and asking for $10, $20 over birthdays or holidays. Also gives them ideas for how to host a dinner where you charge $20 a plate and you cook, a Thai meal because you want to go to Thailand. We just want to encourage students to think about, like, what is your contribution to this trip? Maybe you're not going to be able to raise $3,000 for the program, but what can you do to raise $500 or $200 or $1,000 to be a part of the experience and really have some buy-in into the opportunity itself? This is just some really cool information that I think about. I like to share about scholarships at Rustic Pathways. But last year we awarded just about $285,000 in scholarship funds. And we have a couple different categories of scholarships. So ranges from our teacher appreciation program, service scholarship, gap year scholarship. The application for our service scholarship is still open. It closes next Wednesday, March 20th. The service scholarship itself is financial need based first. So the first qualifier for it is you need to provide household income statement, which is usually like a tax return that documents household income. Your household income needs to be under $95,000 a year in order to qualify. And then there are a couple essays that students will have to write in order for us to evaluate who will receive the service scholarships themselves. I really encourage people to spend some time. They're not very long essays. They're like 2 to 3 paragraphs, but spend some time thinking about those essays and really putting in the time in. When you sort of, and this is advice that I'll give students when you're applying for scholarships for university as well. Yeah, you might spend 2, 3, 4, 10 hours writing these essays. It might be a lot of time. You might not get the scholarship, but it's a pretty great investment of your time. Even if you think about how many times for any of these scholarships, you might spend a couple hours to get $1,000 or to get $2,000, like whatever it is. either for a Rustic Pathways program or for university, anyone in the adult world would take that hourly rate for the amount of money that you're getting. So really take the time to think about your answers thoughtfully. Make sure that a parent, a guardian, a friend, a teacher, maybe reads through it and gives you some honest feedback to make sure that you're submitting a quality application. Like I said, rusticpathways.com/scholarships is where all the information is, including how to apply. Deadline is next Wednesday at midnight. Think about the deadline as next Tuesday, though. Inevitably, it happens every year. People apply for the scholarship, they wait until 10 minutes before the deadline, and then internet goes out, or something happens and they forget to submit it that night, and they ask us 1, 2, 3 days after the deadline, can I still submit? It is a hard deadline. It sounds mean, but we're really trying to encourage people to think about sticking to deadlines. It's really important for us to indicate to students that are really passionate and interested and can follow some of those steps and instructions. So think about the deadline on Tuesday in case something happens. We still have a little bit of extra time, but the official deadline is next Wednesday to apply for that. Next thing, I'm just gonna show y'all how to enroll. So I'm gonna step out here and go to the Rustic Pathways website itself. So easiest way to do it, if you're just on the main page, there's always gonna be a button right up here that just says enroll. So you click on that to fill out the application itself. I won't go through the full application, but this is what it looks like. The first little bit, you're just going to be filling out basic demographic information, student name, parent, guardian information, what trip are you selecting, all of those kind of things. It takes about 15, 20 minutes, I would say, to fill out the application. So just make sure you have about 15 or 20 minutes to fill it out. Because once you start it, if you started it and then came back 3 days later, that information isn't saved, so you'd have to start it again. So definitely just make sure that you have the time to fill it out all at once. The other thing that I want to show y'all on the website here is just how to navigate the website. So when thinking about figuring out what program is the best fit for you, if you click that menu button, so that's again right here just in the upper right hand corner, it'll open up this page. And you have a couple different options. So like we were talking about, if you know that all you want to do is go to Morocco, awesome. You click on Morocco, it'll pull up all of our programs to Morocco. The other thing you can do is sort of separate out by category. So again, if we go to this menu section, pull up the menu here, you can start to look at programs maybe by program types. So this right here gives you a couple different ways just to click through trips. So as we were talking about, you're like, ooh, base house, that sounds awesome. I definitely want something that's a little bit more comfortable. Connor was talking about that, sounds right up my alley. Then you can click on the categories of programs and see all the programs that are under that base house sort of umbrella or definition. You also might search by sort of interest level. So if we go back to the menu section, and go back to that program types. As my internet loads. But the different program types, those are going to be things like animal lovers or adrenaline junkie or aspiring doctor. Those are going to be if you're really interested in a category of program. So if you're like, oh, I really want to work with animals, or I really want to work with something related to the medical profession or something of that nature. So it's another great way to sort of look at the programs themselves. Here it is. And if we go back to this Morocco section, so let's say, okay, Moroccan Wanderer, we know we want to do that trip. Another great feature that I like to point out to people is the Save Your Spot section. So this trip is actually a perfect example of it. You'll start to see the departure dates for the programs. It's all live availability. So it will, if someone would sign up right now for the June 18th, July 3rd departure date, it will immediately tick down to sold out. Sold out literally means sold out. You're not able to enroll in the program unless there's a shift or cancellation from the trip or something like that. Once you get 4 or fewer spots on a program, it'll individually list it out and say there's 1 spot left or 3 spots left. It gets marked as limited availability when there's less than 50% capacity. Otherwise, it's just marked as available. But another cool feature that we have at the website is this option that says save your spot. If you want to save your spot on the program, so you are pretty sure you want to do the Moroccan Wanderer program, this date works out for you, you just need another day to answer your final questions as a family, or talk to the student or parent or guardian, or give us a call because you had some final questions. That's a great time to save your spot. You'll fill out like a little form. So it'll auto-populate with the date you selected of Moroccan Wanderer, July 30th. You just fill out your name, your email address, and a phone number, and it'll save your spot for 72 hours on that program. You can only save one program at a time for 72 hours, and then it will expire. If you save your spot on the program, you'll get an automatic email sent to you afterwards, and that'll have a direct enrollment link to it. So that will be a special link just for you. You'll just want to click on that in your email. It'll take you to the enrollment form right away, and it'll enroll you into the spot that you had saved. I'll go back here. Also, something we wanted to do for webinar attendees tonight, we have a discount available for y'all as a thank you for taking the time to think about what are you passionate and excited about. We always like to encourage people to think about what aligns with their passions. It's ultimately better for you as a student. It's better for us as an organization because you are aligning your passions and interests with the program types. Ultimately, we want you to have such a transformational opportunity on the program in itself that you tell all your friends, your cousins, or things about that. So as a thank you for listening about how to figure out what programs you're most aligned with, we want to give you all a 10% discount code. So you can use RP4Web when you're signing up for a program, which will give you 10% off whatever program you select. You have to use it before midnight on Sunday. So we usually give people 3 days. So 3 days from today is anytime Sunday before midnight is when that code will be valid. And you'll see in the application itself, there'll be a section that just says like referral code. You'll just type that in there and it'll automatically apply the discount for y'all. Yeah, that is it in terms of like the final formal presentation. Always encourage people, you know, if you have any questions, always feel free to give us a call or email us or send us an online chat. It's myself and 3 other global program advisors. All of us have worked for Rustic for about 10 years and have worked in about a dozen countries each. So we're always more than happy to sort of answer any of your questions, either about logistics or figuring out any like small details about programs or just comparing and contrasting 2 different trips. So always feel encouraged to give us a call whenever. And I will see here if we can pull up some questions. So, cool. So the one question I see here is a question about how often are locations reviewed for changing conditions in terms of political situations, weather, infectious diseases. What happens if conditions deteriorate prior to travel? Awesome question. So at Rustic Pathways, I think it's really cool and interesting to think about our evaluation process for how we set up our safety and risk management protocols. The first thing that we do, even before entering a country, is we look at a country politically, socially, environmentally, and from a health perspective in order to evaluate if it's a safe destination. So politically, we want to make sure that it's not an unstable government or an unstable situation that jeopardizes tourists or travel into that region. Socially means that we want to make sure it doesn't matter what your skin tone is, your sexuality, your religious background, if you're a man or if you're a woman, you're not going to be persecuted because of those categories that you might identify as while traveling. We want to make sure that environmentally it's set up in a region that's still appropriate and safe for students to travel. So we want to make sure that it's not in regions that are highly susceptible to hurricanes or earthquakes or weren't just hit by a hurricane or earthquake, which affected sort of like travel or logistics within that country. And then health perspective is looking at sort of like infectious diseases or things like that that could exist while traveling. You know, so we're going to evaluate a country. We're not going to go to a place where there's like Ebola outbreak or where there's a huge swine flu pandemic happening. That's what we do even before entering a country. Also keeping in mind that any of those categories could change at any time, even in your own home country. It's one thing that I think is so cool about Rustic Pathways is that we have full-time year-round operations in every country that we travel and our staff members there are always sort of monitoring those situations on a year-round continual basis. So if there were a political situation that occurred in a country that was making travel unsafe or just we weren't sure about it, we would just pull our programming content from that country for that year. It has definitely happened in the past. I actually think I like to promote that. I think it helps parents and families feel comfortable that we are absolutely willing to pull our operations in a location. So I think the last time we did it on a major scale was 2012. We pulled our operations from Thailand for the summer, just because there was some political protests happening in Bangkok where we were flying in and out of that made parents feel a little bit uncomfortable. People were not really sure how it was going to develop or unfold, or if it could spill from like the government side of town to maybe some more of the touristy parts of town. So rather than just chance it, even though we only have like 2 programs that visit Bangkok, we just pulled all of our operations from Thailand for that year. After that summer, things changed. Thailand's a great political environment again. So we went back to Thailand. Not a problem for us to pull those destinations. We've done it in the past for countries where things have changed and not gotten better, or we haven't felt more comfortable about it. So we've not gone back. If something like that would occur, so if there would be a massive earthquake in Tanzania in May and it jeopardized the safety or health opportunities for us to keep our students safe, we would pull Tanzania, and then we would give families the option either for a refund or to change programs, or we would try and find like a comparable program or maybe create like similar program content in another country or region that we operate. So that's sort of what it would look like if a situation changed or develops or evolves close to or proximate to travel. It doesn't look like actually there are any other questions. I'll give it another second to see if anyone has any more questions. You can type it in the Q&A section. But as I mentioned, absolutely feel free. Give us a call, send us an email, write into us on online chat. We are always more than happy to walk through any of those things with families. We feel really comfortable and confident about our safety and risk management protocols. We feel super comfortable and confident that we've got great programming and great trips for students that really align with different passions and interests. So it's all about just finding that. I see Kathy has another question about what are the common questions asked in these webinars. And quite honestly, runs the gamut. Usually we cover what people are looking for because we know what the common questions are. So I really hit probably most of them about like safety and risk management protocol. How do I determine like what are the best programs for me? What financial aid or scholarship opportunities do you have? How do I enroll into a program? Like things like that are really the common question. Always what I sort of encourage people to do is, again, give us a call. Doesn't matter if it's a 60-second question or 60-minute question. We're happy to walk anything through with you. And what you'll find is there's just going to be different times that you have different questions. So like, what should I pack? It's a great question, not one that really matters right now or evaluating what program is the right fit for you. That's a question probably for a month or 2 prior to travel, once you've already decided on your trip. So thank you just for attending. As I said, anything else, give us a call. Otherwise, we are really looking forward to seeing you this summer. Thanks so much, y'all. Bye.